around equity. So I want to begin by saying that this work hasn't just started. We've actually been having these conversations since 2016, 2017, and during that time, leading up to the present, we have held a number of professional development opportunities for our teachers. We've talked about culturally responsive teaching and diversity. We have taken part in poverty simulations to help address our understanding of students living in poverty. We've been involved for years, as you had mentioned, with the Minority Recruitment Consortium, which is CAMRA. It's a Cleveland area local recruitment consortium that in order to help us obtain more minority teachers and administrators. So we are dedicated to doing that and have been for a number of years. We have a strategic plan committee that has been in the works for quite some time. And starting in around 17, we studied several instructional frameworks related to equity and trying to find one that best fit. And we found that the Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, was one that fit our needs and one in which we have adopted. We also sent teams to Wisconsin to receive level 1 and level 2 training on equity, and that's the ICS, Integrated Comprehensive Systems for Equity. And again, that's with Elise Ventura out of Wisconsin. And that is a multiple day commitment, and we sent a number of our staff members to bring back the information and to help lead our initiative on equity. We also have had 2 equity audits completed in years prior. I want to start with the infographic, if we could show that. Yes, this infographic, thank you, is something that was started in just the summer of 2020. And we created this as an illustration of a roadmap that tells our story on how we got started with our work. And I'm just going to walk you through it and talk about each step on our journey as we go. So first, we started our conversations, although again, I mentioned that we've had numerous conversations prior to this, but the death of George Floyd was really the catalyst for our conversation among our administrative team with the actual desire to make a change, not just to continue to talk about it or provide professional development, but to really take a stand and make a strong statement. So we started to investigate our social justice work, or start our work and tie it into our equity framework because we really saw how the two fit together. And so on the next slide that I will share, I will go more in depth about that and show you the connection. But we decided we had to start somewhere. And where do you start? But with a mission, a vision. So we started with our mission, a vision, also a tagline, and the logo that you see there. So our tagline, as you can see, is Bearcats Building Bridges to Social Justice. And there is our logo that accompanies that. Our mission is to inspire change through courageous conversations. And I think I heard that in a previous, someone speaking previously about courageous conversations. Our vision is to build bridges between our students, parents, and community stakeholders so that we can come together to discuss significant social justice issues in order to foster a culturally responsive environment in our schools and community. So here you see the link between our schools and communities. So we're trying to bridge that, not just have the discussions in our schools, but also in our communities. And as Rick had mentioned, we have 4 communities that are all actually quite different in their own right. The next step on our journey is, and again, I believe we heard this earlier as well, which we recognized that we had a need and perhaps needed some assistance in getting started, and also someone to just guide us and lend their expertise on race-related issues and social justice and equity and anti-racism. And so therefore, we hired a part-time consultant who has been working with the district, and that has been a benefit to us. Our next stop was and has been embedded in it and ingrained in our work and has continued for years. But again, to mention our staff professional development, in which we've offered many opportunities relative to covering implicit bias, we heard that earlier, culturally responsive teaching, and diversity, just to name a few. Along those same lines, then, going a step further, is that we took part in book talks as well as movie viewings. And so the one book talk that we did among our administrative team was White Fragility. And so that was, again, a catalyst for conversation and a good starter to get us into this work. We also had 2 movie viewings, and COVID threw us for a little bit of put a little monkey wrench into our plan, which is we planned to have the entire district together in the auditorium watching a movie together. But instead we watched it online, and then afterwards we had conversation, and it was a debrief around racism and social justice issues. And the 2 movies that we watched are 13th and America's Son. And I highly recommend, especially America's Son, just a very moving movie, very powerful. And I would say that in my 25 years, this was probably one of the most impactful professional developments and discussions that I have been part of. And to watch a staff emote in the way that they did and how it just evoked such raw feelings and expressions from our staff was just amazing to watch. But it left people wanting more. So that was probably one of the most powerful things we did and will continue to do. So those are just two examples. And similarly, we took those two movies, the 13th and America's Son, and we did a similar format, but with our community. So we are hosting a minimum of 3 as our goal to community forums. We've had 2, and our 3rd is in the works. But we've invited numerous people from anyone from the community can attend. So we've had city officials, council, mayors, parents all join and that have been invited. And again, we had those forums with an open discussion after the community members watched each one of those movies and we came and discussed. And our consultant moderated the line of questioning about the movies. So that was also an impactful, I thought, an impactful event. And next and actually this isn't really next because it came prior to some of this, but we threw it in there, which is that when this was all happening around George Floyd, we decided that we were going to have a mural painted by our high school students and faculty. And so that is in the main entrance, and it is a Black Lives Matter mural, and it's at our high school main entrance. And we did not want to put this somewhere discreet. We wanted it to be on display, and we wanted it to be in a heavily trafficked and viewed area. So we chose a very an area that is highly traveled. So that has another nice event that took place. Our next stop was with our Lead Diversity program. We sent a district representative to this Lead Diversity program, and it's through our Diversity Center of Northeast Ohio, kind of a train the trainer model, whereas he will go through a 10-month program and learn about advocacy and with inclusion and equity and the various other things that will come back to the district and share that knowledge and hopefully lead our efforts as well. And then included in all of this work, it was in our strategic plan, which I believe I referenced at the beginning, and that is that we've had a strategic plan for, this is our second plan since I've been here in 6 years, but our first plan did not include its own goal on social justice and equity, and this time we have one. So we're just starting the work in our second plan, but our goal for the strategic plan is that all BCSD stakeholders will be challenged to engage in opportunities that are culturally responsive and eliminate inequalities. So we're just beginning that work. And then we also created a leadership advisory team, which I will discuss. It's on the next slide, so I'll save my remarks for that. And then lastly, we're in the process of creating student groups, and we're working on establishing leaders and students to emerge in their own behalf and advocacy around social justice, as well as other groups that have been marginalized. So we are excited to get those underway. We're in the beginning stages of getting those established. And then just to mention a couple other things that you don't see in our infographic of things that we've done. We are currently in the early stages of participating in another equity audit process, and that's in training through our local ESC, Educational Service Center. We also have been trying to keep this conversation alive and not just sporadically throwing things into the mix just so people can be reminded, but to keep it systemic, to keep it ongoing and on the forefront of people's minds about anti-racism and social justice and the injustices that we're seeing. So we've sent a number of letters and statements to our community and also posted them on social media. And in doing so, we're trying to take positions. We're also trying to educate the public, create awareness, and also encourage people to reflect. And some of the statements that we've put out included the death of George Floyd, Juneteenth, Black History Month, and also the insurrection at the Capitol. I did have a statement that went out regarding that. We also created a draft of an equity policy. I heard others mention that this evening, and I wish we would have started this years ago, but it's in the works now, and I'm happy to see that. And that will go for the first reading to the Board of Education in March. So we're hoping to get that passed. We also, in what you'll see in the next slide here, is that we created an equity framework and social justice map framework. So at this time, I'll share with you that if we can Thank you. This framework was created by our Equity and Diversity Leadership Advisory Team that I mentioned earlier. And as you'll see, there are 4 cornerstones, each of which has a member of an advisory team that oversees a subcommittee and that's comprised of district representatives. And I should also mention that this framework that you see, and for the purpose of this presentation, was scaled back. So I removed a number of bullet points and non-negotiables for the sake of not cluttering the screen, as well as for the sake of time. I don't have time to go through the whole framework, but if you are interested in viewing that, you can see it on our website. So starting with the first cornerstone, what you see there is the focus on equity and social justice. So what you might see in this quadrant in the work with the subcommittee, that the work that they're doing is around the history of marginalization. You'll find research here. Our audit is something that would fall under here, and our non-negotiables, as well as all of our work around the social justice and the things that I mentioned in the infographic. The second cornerstone is aligning staff and students, whereas we will see scheduling and staffing and realigning our staff to address equity needs and issues. And then you'll see in cornerstone 3, transforming teaching and learning. And of course, this is where it all happens, and this is where we co-plan to co-serve our students. And here you will see the universal design of learning, our multi-tiered systems of support, and our positive behavior intervention supports, among many other things to address equity. Then lastly, in number 4, you see leveraging policy and funding. And this is where the creation of our equity policy stemmed from. We also, in this, that's very important, and I heard others mention this, is the alignment of resources. And again, it doesn't always mean that every school is going to get the same allocation. It's going to be based on needs, the individual needs of students, as well as the buildings. And so we are committed to doing that to ensure equity among our students. The non-negotiables were drafted that you see below we were drafted in our committee after a training in Wisconsin, and we vetted them with various groups, and then we presented them at individual staff meetings for their input. And we actually have a total of 8, but in the full framework, again, you will see them, as well as we list icons symbolizing the alignment between the non-negotiables and the cornerstones. So you're able to see the connections that are made as we're trying to show our staff how this all connects and how it ties together. So in closing, I guess I would just add that the idea of being equitable for us in Bedford schools is about meeting people where they are at and just ensuring that they have what they need in order for them not to be excluded from opportunities available to those that have the requisite resources due to their personal circumstances. And our district is committed to providing equitable access and ensuring that fairness, equity, and inclusion are essential principles of our district. Thank you very much.